What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. All right, moving on to Celtics-Sixers. This team kind of has Philly's number. Boston's won 4 of their last 6 regular season games against the Sixers, as well as the playoff series last year. In this particular game, we have got guys out of the lineup like Kristaps, Porzingis, and Jaylen Brown missed this game, and yet they kind of just manhandled the Sixers throughout. Same stuff you are used to seeing in this particular matchup, like Al Horford just does a really good job guarding Joel Embiid. Like I heard a stat in the broadcast that only Clint Capella has guarded Joel Embiid for more minutes than Al Horford has in his career. And I talk about this concept a lot. I've talked about it surrounding James Harden, the idea of like, if I got to, let's say that I'm the guy who has the basketball and you have to guard me once, my chances of scoring are at a certain level. If you have to guard me 5 times, my points per possession might drop a little bit. If you have to guard me 20 times, my points per possession might drop a bit. The bigger that number gets, as you get more reps, you get to pick up on my tendencies. You understand my body language better. You see my go-to moves. Like, you understand, like, you'll pick up little cues like, oh, when he does that, he's almost always going to spin back over his right shoulder. And like even little things like Joel Embiid draws a ton of fouls by getting defenders to hit his arms as he's going up into his shooting motion, right? And Al Horford is just so tuned in to that kind of grifty bullshit from Embiid that he actually knows where the shooting pocket is every single time. And so Embiid will spin into some right shoulder fade and he'll like know the ball is going to be over here and he'll smack the ball away over here and knock it away as he's going up. Whereas, other defensive players in the league will end up raking him across the arms and committing fouls. And, Joel Embiid's really good and he's still going to make shots against him, but there's no doubt that Horford makes it harder on him. And then on the other end of the floor, he consistently punishes Embiid by doing 2 things. He sets really good screens for Boston's ball handlers, which always punishes Embiid, who likes to sit further back in his drop coverage, right? Like, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Embiid defensively here in a minute, but this is the kind of thing that Embiid can struggle with. Like when he can sit back by the basket and play goaltender, he can be one of the most dominant defensive players in the league. But as soon as teams can really spread him out and test his, ability to cover ground, that is where he can start to become a flawed defensive player. And Boston in particular is consistently given Embiid issues in those ways. And then not just setting the good screens to get those guys open jumpers, like where you'll see Embiid back at the foul line while Horford setting some screen for Tatum 25 feet from the rim, who's walking into a 23-footer and knocking it down easily, uncontested. But even beyond that, it's the picking and popping. And like last night, he just had that jump shot going and time again punished Embiid for helping elsewhere on the floor. And that ended up being, one of the many ways that they gave the Philly defense issues in this particular game. And then, Jayson Tatum, it's kind of the combination of Al Horford and Tatum. Tatum's always given Embiid issues because, we remember in Game 7 last year was a similar type of thing where Tatum just absolutely cooked the Sixers in pick and roll by basically beating Embiid in a deep drop, then eventually forcing switches and hitting jumpers in his face. And they didn't quite get to the scoring on him in ISO element in this particular game just because Philly never really went to hard switches against Tatum. But we've seen him do that as well. And this particular matchup is just that this team is just good at getting Embiid into precarious defensive positions and getting easy baskets. We had a mailbag question the other day talking about the Celtics and their depth surrounding, whether or not the bench was good enough. And one of the things I said is like when you have 6 high-level starters in the lineup, like, you can always just stagger different things and find lineups that work. And I thought this was an interesting example of how the talent of this team does create, successful opportunities for their role players. Like Kristaps Porzingis is out, you're just sliding in another starting NBA center into that spot, right? Jaylen Brown is out, you're bringing Sam Hauser in there, but whether it's Svi Mykhailiuk, whether it's Peyton Pritchard, like these are good basketball players. And they're not playing in a role that they can't achieve. They're not being asked to do things that they're incapable of doing, right? Like it's not like you're saying, hey, Sam Hauser, go guard Tyrese Maxey. No, they have Jrue Holiday, still healthy and ready to play. Derek White, still healthy and ready to play. Jayson Tatum, still healthy and ready to play. Those are 3 outstanding perimeter defenders. So you're not asking them to guard anybody that they can't guard. You're not asking them to consistently create shots against a set defense. You're asking them to play classic role player basketball. Drive and kick when you have an opportunity, knock down open threes when you have an opportunity, do your job and help in recover situations, run your lanes in transition. If you can do that, you can succeed. And again, these are good players. Hauser's been he's been an absolute flamethrower as of late, knocking down his 3-point shot. Peyton Pritchard's been in a little bit of slump, but he made a couple shots in this game. Svi Mykhailiuk, I thought, kind of got caught up in that wave of Celtics 3-point shooting and made a couple big ones himself. These are good basketball players, and they're going to be able to step in and succeed when they're surrounded by great basketball players, even when that's the advantage of having 6 great basketball players, is you just have the ability to build a functional basketball team night in and night out regardless. The one thing that worries me again with this team is just overall center depth. If Porzingis and Horford go down, I'm not sure if that's something they can handle. Jayson Tatum's back down game. So I thought this was an interesting example. There's a huge play at the end of this game where I think it was 105-100 if I remember correctly, and Jayson Tatum posted up DeAnthony Melton and pump faked on a right shoulder fade, got DeAnthony Melton to leave his shoes essentially, and then he drew the foul, went to the free throw line and made both. And again, there's a little bit of a chess match that sets that up, right? And Tatum in general has been using the back down game a lot more. He's still up over 4 post-ups a game, which is more than double than he did last year. And there was an early possession in this game where he posted up Tobias Harris and backed him down and made a right shoulder fade, which, by the way, Tobias Harris is 230 pounds, and Tatum just backed him down easy to get to a spot close to the basket so he could make that little right shoulder fade. Then he actually missed a right shoulder fade against DeAnthony Melton 2 possessions before the one where he drew the foul. And what was interesting about it is he backed him down, got a really good look, but he missed it. And then he used that and DeAnthony Melton contesting that shot to bait him and took the exact same shot, this time from the opposite block, and DeAnthony Melton left his shoes, and that's how he was able to draw the foul. And those are little things that he'll get even better at over the course of the season as he leans into this post-up attack even further. And then lastly, I wanted to shout out Jrue Holiday. He dominated this game early on. The Celtics went up 39-22, and then the Sixers went on this crazy run to get it back up. I think they went up by 5 in the early second quarter or third quarter, and then the Celtics just basically took over the game again from there. But he dominated the game earlier. He was attacking matchups in the post. He can attack the smaller Sixers guards. He was getting a lot of deflections and forcing turnovers. The Sixers in general were a little lackadaisical, and he was capitalizing on that. On the Sixers front, they're just not playing very good basketball at the moment, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. They've now lost 2 in a row, but their defensive issues actually started in the first Indiana game. And we talked about this yesterday, but I think it comes down to 2 particular things. One is the defensive limitations of Embiid when he's going against really good pick and roll shot creators that are also surrounded by spacing. And now again, in one thing I'll say in Embiid's defense, that's the hardest thing to guard, right? The hardest thing to guard in the NBA is a really good pick and roll shot creator surrounded by lots of offensive skill that can make you pay for sending help, right? So again, it's not easy, but that's the difference between the guys at the very top of the league and wherever Embiid is, which is, in my opinion, a second, third, somewhere else in one of the lower tiers of the good defensive players in the league. Embiid's a good defensive player, but he's not in the same tier as the top guys, in large part because once you actually start to space him out, you can actually kind of slice and dice the Sixers in a lot of ways. And we talked about how Tyrese Halliburton in his pull-up three-point shooting was kind of causing problems pulling Embiid up to the level of the screen. And then they were picking apart the low man by cutting on the backdoor with Obi Toppin, right? In this particular game, it's the same type of thing. Embiid wants to drop back, but he can't against Tatum in particular, but also against Derek White. He can't. And then, on the when he's sitting, when he comes up to the level, then they start to have issues in rotation. And again, the Sixers to start the year were excellent defensively at the point of attack and in rotation. But in the last 3 games in particular, they're just not doing a very good job. I put a bunch of clips in that thread demonstrating examples where the Sixers just weren't communicating in rotation. There'll be a play where Tobias Harris is guarding a shooter on the right wing, he's facing the right. So I guess the left wing if you're the offensive player. And Tyrese Maxey is, coming out of a hedge and recover situation, and he's just sprinting to a guy who's already covered, which then causes another panic rotation from another guy, which leaves another dude open, and like kind of the exact opposite of the thing I was talking about with the Phoenix Suns, where just guys aren't on a string, which is like, again, you make up for that by communicating and then establishing habitual rotations to the point where like everyone is just so locked in and everyone is so communicating and everyone's so bought in from an effort standpoint that the rotations become effective and you can start to recover out of situations like that. But right now they're just not playing very good help and recover defense. And then lastly, the unnecessary over aggressiveness, like, it's one thing to offer a little bit of a high show to make a pull-up jump shot harder, but they'll outright double team guys for no reason. Like there was a late possession in this game where they straight up double teamed Derek White in a ball screen up on the right wing, and it's like, yeah, like, do you want to let him walk into an easy pull-up jump shot with no contest? No, but like at the same time, I don't think you need to blitz him and get the ball out of his hands. And I can't remember exactly what happened on the Derek White blitz play, but they ended up getting an easy shot out of it. I think it ended up being Sam Hauser cut to the basket, which pulled Embiid in, which then was the skip pass to Al Horford, and he made the shot. And yeah, that was the play, because everyone after the game was like, because Al Horford blew a kiss at Joel Embiid when he made the shot, and it's like, it's not Embiid's fault. I mean, it's Nick Nurse's fault because he sent a double team at Derek White, and as a result, Sam Hauser was wide open on the cut, and Al Horford, ended up getting wide open because Embiid had to leave him, right? But like there was another play where Patrick Beverley and Marcus Morris just randomly double teamed. I don't even remember who it was. I think it was like Drew Holiday or somebody in the left corner in a transition possession. It was like swing, wide open shot, and you're like, why are you double teaming him right there? Like it just doesn't make any sense. But now, for those of you guys who remember my coverage of the Raptors over the last couple of years, that's kind of Nick Nurse's thing. He's a super aggressive defensive coach. And now, in my opinion, there's a time and a place for that. But if you are going to do that all the time, you need to rotate well out of it. And right now, the Sixers just aren't. That's going to exacerbate that situation every single time. They have a 125 defensive rating in their last 3 games. Not good. Now, big picture, what does that mean? Sometimes teams just play bad basketball. That's what I said about the Lakers earlier in the season. They're still playing bad basketball. But like, again, sometimes teams play bad basketball. These are the same groups of guys that were defending at a higher level to start the season. Is there a certain ceiling to what the Sixers are capable of? Sure, but none of us are picking the Sixers to win the Eastern Conference, right? So like, at least not unless they make some sort of massive trade. So again, like within the context of the regular season, they're fine. They're just playing bad basketball right now. The other thing I noticed in this game, and some of it is just personnel related, but the Celtics had a lot of success doubling and recovering out from Joel Embiid. Similar type of thing that we were talking about in terms of being on a string and rotating out of it. But the Sixers are a pretty easy team to rotate against because they don't have a lot of ball handling outside of their starters. So like Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, DeAnthony Melton. Those are all really versatile offensive players that can dribble, shoot, and pass. And that kind of makes it so they can play drive and kick basketball. But the rest of the roster are all guys that are not great at that. Like Robert Covington, who had a good game in this game. He's a good offensive rebounder, cutting to the basket well. Marcus Morris, at one point in time was a guy who could do this pretty well, but right now he's a lot older and a lot slower. Paul Reed, definitely not a high-level dribble, shoot, pass guy. Patrick Beverley, like a legit ball stopper. Like he's incapable of doing anything after he catches the basketball until after he's pump faked and done a jab step. Like it's like, I just remember that from when I covered him with the Lakers. It's like catching the corner, pump fake, jab step, and then maybe he'll do something, right? And then Jaden Springer, who's really exciting young point of attack defender, had some good possessions on Jayson Tatum, ripped him clean, took him to the basket, was a victim of a bullshit call on Derek White late in the game where he just slid his feet, took contact in the chest, and got called for a foul. But again, not a guy who's a top tier, dribble, shoot, pass guy. So one of the things that'll happen is like when they get away from their starters, like there was a lineup in the third quarter that was like, I want to say it was Joel Embiid with Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, Patrick Beverley, and I can't remember who the fifth guy was, but like they were able to rotate out of those kick out passes because it like there was a skip pass to Patrick Beverley who like couldn't do something quickly with it. Ended up in Marcus Morris's hands on the left wing, and he's slow to make a decision. And like there's too many ball stoppers. That's going to make it really hard to beat double teams. And this is a big part of the reason why I want the Sixers to eventually make some sort of all-in trade to bring in another high-level offensive player, because just one more guy, especially with Kelly Oubre eventually coming back from his injuries, one more guy like that's a guy who can dribble, shoot, and pass is going to go a long way towards making it harder for teams to throw the kitchen sink at Joel Embiid.